Hello, welcome to another SHUMPCAST. I'm Tony Shump, Ralph Nardella.
And I'm the minute Okay.
Well, this is we've got a special guest on today. It's about music, so that's why you're
Music,
excited.
that's why I did.
Yeah.
Mario Pavarotti.
That's not you, that's a
me.
tape recording, you know.
My dad was an opera singer.
Where's the tape recorder?
And Ashley Hicks' dad was an opera singer too. It was his birthday on Friday. We had a big birthday there Friday. He turned 57.
57.
Yeah. And then Hanny on Saturday.
Oh, yeah. Who are these
59.
people? Are they famous people? Are they famous people or just
Ashley Hicks played for bloody Port Melbourne. He was a boundary rider. Actually, his real name's Ivan.
How many votes did he get?
Mate, lots and lots.
Hey, just sing it again. I like that.
No, don't try and make me do that. No.
It's a bit like a
what about oh my God, my favourite, Bert Newton.
Oh, the entertainer.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very
that
sad. Look, just for our overseas viewers, Bert Newton is pretty much
institution entertainer.
How would you say Bert Newton?
A jack of all trades. He did everything.
Like
he was a singer, an entertainer, a comedian, a humanitarian. He had a beautiful family, grandchildren. He was and didn't he get?
He was very big. He was one of the best, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He was like Sammy Davis Jr. in America type. You know,
bigger. He would be like the Frank. He would be like the Frank Sinatra. Come on. Anyway, what are you laughing about? That's sad.
No, you made me laugh. You're a very funny guy. So on the show today we've got Andrea Baker. She's
Dr. Andrea Baker.
Oh yes. She's written a book called The Great Music City.
Great Music City.
Yeah, and
explores music space identity.
Yeah, she's an internationally awarded winning journalist, author, educator and researcher with over 20 years experience.
Wow, there you go.
Hello, Andrea Baker, how are you?
Good, thank you.
It's good. Now, just about your book here, The Great Music City, the book you wrote. Now, probably the first question I want to ask you, just in a nutshell, what's the book about?
The book's about analysing cities around the world and how they brand themselves as music cities, and that's in relation to the economics, their heritage, and the whole music scene. So the main three case studies of the book are Melbourne, Austin, and Berlin, but I look at the big superstar cities such as London, New York, and Los Angeles also.
Dr. Andrea Baker. Sorry, this is me, Dom. I was just wondering, why did you write the book?
Well, basically, I was on the City of Melbourne Music Committee, and people were always talking about music cities, but there was no definition or attempt to quantify it. People were liberally saying Melbourne is the global music city of the world, Melbourne is the live music city of the world, but there was no definition or quantification of how music is seen within the economic realm. So I decided to write a book and investigate cities, how they frame themselves as music cities.
So how long did it take you to write the book, Andrea?
Well, I was doing it part-time because I also work full-time. So it took me about 5 years.
Oh, wow, 5 years. Long time. So you focused on Melbourne, Austin and Berlin as the main cities.
That's in the
Yes, I did, because those three cities had very strong branding, as they were branding themselves as music cities, and the populations were all about 4 million, so it was like, apples with apples. And also they were sharing music policies and how to engage communities. So they had a lot of similarities that I wanted to draw on and look at how they've all developed. But they also had different histories, because the Berlin music scene, has been vibrant, way before the 1700s, whereas the Austin music scene really developed about the 1960s. And then I would say at the same time, the Melbourne scene developed about the 1960s. So they had different heritage, but they had the same branding processes, and they were also sharing policies about how to engage audiences.
And now sticking with Melbourne, why is it a music city? How do you define that as Melbourne as a music city?
Well, Melbourne defines itself as a music city because it claims that it's got more venues per capita than anywhere else in the world, but that is debatable, and I can discuss that a bit later. So it defines it by having about 550 live music venues. Melbourne defines itself as a music city because it generates a profit within the music industry for about $1 billion a year. And also Melbourne defines itself as a music city because of their heritage linked to the mushroom record fame, linked to a lot of the musicians that are living here, and linked to the progressive work that the different local councils do in relation to music and music scene. So it's mostly the economics and heritage why Melbourne is seen to be a music city.
And what about the capacity? Is it like we've got the most people at, like the MCG would probably hold about 100,000 people? Is it anything to do with capacity and stuff?
Well, basically, it's per capita. I mean, like, if you're looking at per capita, and Sydney's got a bigger population per capita, and Sydney, would probably sell more tickets per capita. But per venue, Melbourne comes out ratio on top next to London and New York.
So you still think Melbourne is, I remember back in the, 20, 30 years ago, there was a lot of venues going, bands playing 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yeah, buzzing the same.
Yeah, where now, it's not really like that anymore. You probably get, 1 gig a week.
Well, I think in the last 5 years with different government policies, lockout laws, and restrictions in relation to noise, where some venues had to close down because a new building was put up next to it and people complained about the noise.
Yeah.
I think the music city has had a lot of tensions and strains and challenges, but also in the last 2 years, we all know any music city in the world has been impacted by COVID-19.
Yeah.
So pre-COVID, we had problems with legislation and noise restrictions, and post-COVID, we now have problems with space distancing and licensing laws in relation to safety.
Yeah, do you think it's got to do with, the music industry has changed, with the streaming services, like Spotify and all that? They don't bring out records like they used to, sort of thing.
Well, I think streaming services have complemented the live music scene. It has when that first started, for example, with Spotify. But as we've seen also during COVID, the live music stream was the main place that people went to. And at the end of the day, during COVID, most people were saying, when can we physically go back to a live music event? So people are missing the live music experience. So Spotify and streaming services will never be authentic as being there in the mosh pit at a gig, and people were missing that in the last 2 years.
100%, yeah. I mean, it's all downloads now. It's pretty much downloads. You've got to get like a billion downloads to make some money. Is that correct?
Well, basically, you make money from downloads, but increasingly, people were making more money from live music events than downloads. Yeah. So therefore, that's why they were constantly touring, because the live acts were generating more money than the download.
But some of the big bands also too have sold their catalogues, like Fleetwood Mac and the Rolling Stones, I think it was. Some of those bands have sold their catalogue for, so much money sort of thing. So it's things saying...
to commercialise it.
Yeah, saying, we're not going to make any more money now, so we might as well, cash it in sort of thing.
Well, basically, that's another thing about being at a live music gig. People usually sell their merchandise more at a live music gig, and also their CDs than they do online, because people are physically there and buying it. So therefore, the live music gig also generates the merchandise also.
Dedicated this the book in loving memory of my parents. Can I just ask you about that? I'm sorry. I mean, I don't want to sound crass or anything like that, but you dedicated this book to your parents. Why is that?
Oh, well, I've dedicated my first 2 books to my parents. Oh, because it was through your parents you learn about music, you design your tastes.
Yeah. But
my parents were really into the 1940s, post-World War, music like Elton John and Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
and then later Shirley Bassey, and then
Yeah.
Johnny O'Keefe. And so, I mean, even when I went to Austin, Texas on a field trip for the book,
Yeah.
I'm not really into Willie Nelson, but I remember my mother was. And Willie Nelson is very much a brand name in Austin, Texas. And I think you dedicate books to people who have brought you up and inspired you.
That's what I sort of wanted to know because, your parents were really musical and, they brought you up. And was there always music playing in the house?
Well, my sister and my two brothers were in bands, so there was always music in the house that way. Yeah. My mother was a singer. My father played the violin.
Oh,
but
beautiful.
also, as we were young, growing up, my siblings were in bands, and I was often singing around shopping centres with my two sisters in a band.
What bands?
When I was younger. So, yes, music was very much a seminal part of our life.
Beautiful. And why didn't you join your siblings' band? I mean, you could have played the tambourine, anything.
Well, I played the guitar and all of that. Look, it's still early days. I could come back and regenerate a career somewhere along the line.
We need a guitarist. Can you... All right, we're only a cover band.
Acoustic. I played acoustic guitar.
Mate, we love acoustic guitar.
Now, in your book there, Andrea, do you talk about, like vinyl, how vinyl's now taken over from CDs, and it's pretty much outselling CDs. What's the story there of all these people buying vinyl records all of a sudden? It's a very unusual
Back to the future
thing to come back into fashion.
Well, I think what's happening is that the retro music style is coming back into fashion. For example, records and people wearing those big headphones. I think people are really even wanting to go back to tape because sometimes you reject something that's so tech and so modern and so based on technology that you want to go back to the terrestrial example of putting on physically a record, and even some of those old tapes we used to get when we were in, Asia, those cheap $2 tapes, there's something grand and authentic about them.
Yeah.
So I think people are going back to vinyl because they're searching for an authentic sound that sometimes the technology and the digital platforms don't provide.
Mm.
But also it brings us back to our youth, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, it does.
I mean, the sound it's just got a warmer sound vinyl, you know what I mean? Like, just a great sound vinyl.
Hey, can I just talk about an elephant in the room? Oh, not an elephant in the room, but
no.
Just touching on the COVID stuff before you were talking about, we've had lots of callers or people giving us email about domestic violence and stuff like that during the pandemic and stuff. I heard you did a study or something about that. Is that true, Andrea?
I actually did. Where that's about to come out. It's a sideways from music, but it's away from COVID.
Yeah.
What we did is we analysed the ABC, the ABC, the Age, and the Herald Sun, how they reported on domestic violence during the first two lockdowns, which was from March to October last year.
Yeah.
We did that, and we found that those three, outlets, especially the Herald Sun, which is the highest circulating newspaper in our nation, barely reported on domestic violence that was happening.
Yeah.
But they did report on it, but on a very marginalised sense. And they were often confusing domestic violence with family violence or violence against women when those three terms were slightly different. But what we were seeing during COVID-19 was a pandemic within a pandemic. So domestic violence increased during COVID-19, and we also had a global pandemic in regards to health.
Yeah. So why did they try and hide? Like, why is everybody not talking about why are we all always downplaying stuff like that? What can we do about it?
I think during COVID-19, everybody was obsessed with the 9 a.m. the 11 a.m. press conference to see how many cases we had and how many people were impacted and what vaccines would help us get us out of this pandemic. So they weren't downplaying it. I think they just had other priorities of news to report on.
Yeah.
But also I think domestic violence is a very sensitive issue. Naming the victim or the perpetrator is difficult legally.
Yeah.
And also sometimes the solutions that are out there sometimes don't actually work because it's a deeper problem about changing the culture.
Yeah.
And so it's a deep society issue.
And also, you did some research, Andrea, on about sexual violence in the music scene in Melbourne.
Is that
For
part
the
of the
Office
book?
of Women? Yeah. What's the story there? What's all that about?
I'm currently doing some work about sexual violence in Melbourne. I'm looking at how sexual violence is played out within the urban music scene, be it festivals, be it venues, or even just buskers. So I'm seeing how women and men, and and people who identify as non-binary or First Nations or trans people, what kind of sexual violence also includes harassment, even verbally. What sort of harassment they experience at venues and in the festival circuit and on the street. Because there's been studies that come out, you may know about the Sony Music case, which broke on Four Corners, ABC Four Corners a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was about sexual harassment, and people are leaving the industry because sexual harassment is rife within the industry, but sexual violence, which includes harassment and rape and assault, has been another pandemic within the music industry for a long time.
Yeah, but
So
still
I'm looking
now,
at that
in this
also.
day and age, it can't be still going on now, can it?
What, sexual violence?
Yeah, and I mean, like, in that music industry, all that, like, that Harvey Weinstein sort of stuff. I mean, surely they can't have people like that still in the industry, yeah?
I think they're still kind of there, but I think what happens with the music industry, it's male, no offence, guys, but it's male dominated.
No offence.
And therefore it's the sexual violence or sexual harassment is based around power inequity.
Yeah.
And therefore it is still there, but I think it's changing. I think there's a lot of policies out there and behavioural patterns where it is changing. But they're still existing, and violence no longer is just physical; it's also emotional and financial, and also not even allowing somebody to get ahead in their career is considered emotional abuse. So I think we are addressing it, but and there's a lot of policies and examples out there to address it. But my study, which I'm doing about sexual violence in the Melbourne music industry, is trying to quantify it.
Okay.
Giving some examples.
Now, going back about the vinyl records, how many vinyl records do you have there, Andrea?
No.
I think I gave them all away.
Well, that's the thing.
Me too. I did too.
That's the thing, people give them away, now they want them back, So if you go to buy a vinyl record today, like a Led Zeppelin vinyl record,
or Under a Blood Red Sky, the Red Album,
it's going to cost you $49, which is very expensive compared to today. You know what I mean?
And you also have to have a record player.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So
have you got one, Andrea?
I haven't got a record player. No.
No. So you gave them all away. We just gave them away. You just chucked them out, or just give them to someone.
What, the record?
Yeah.
I think as you moved from your 20s to your 30s and people weren't playing records anymore, I don't know what happened to them. I mean, sometimes I used to go to record market, different markets, and buy some records for my brothers because they still play records.
Oh,
but I mostly listen to music online.
So do you buy CDs anymore? Would you buy a CD? Would you go out into a JD?
Yes, I still buy some CDs. Yes, I do.
Yep. So most of your music that you listen to is basically downloaded, is it? Or a bit of both, is it?
A bit of both, downloading and streaming, playing it directly to the television with Google Chrome. Yeah.
And Andrea, have you ever played to a live audience? Because you were talking about live audience before, and it sounds like you've played in front of a live audience because you know the feeling of being.
When I was young, I played in front of live audiences, but I'm talking in my teens.
But you must remember that buzz, of being on stage.
I actually just remember the fear.
The fear.
Yeah.
What you don't like? You didn't just absorb it and love it.
I think I was too young to understand it, but as I said, there's always time for a second life, and there is rationale that I could probably go out there again if I had to. I can join your band.
Yes,
Tony.
definitely.
Yeah,
we need a good acoustic guitarist in our band.
Yeah.
Hey, is this your quote? It takes a village to make a music city.
Oh, it does. Yes, it's like a music city is an ecosystem. It's basically, a music city is writers, producers, musicians, people who work the bar, venue owners, security, punters, people who sell the merchandise. It takes everybody to build a music city, and also government and media and, policies and regulations that they write about or they instill. So it takes all of those different elements to make a music city and therefore to create a music community.
So, can I give you that? Which city in the whole world, I mean, seeing you've done all these studies and stuff, would you say, is the music capital of the world, of the planet?
Well, my book says London.
London?
My book says London, but I would say New York.
Okay, but why does your book say London and you say New York? Can you
elaborate?
Because London is the business capital of the music industry. So all the big businesses are there. So if you're going to quantify it financially, it's London.
Okay, but New York because?
Because the vibrancy and the innovation and the very strong multicultural elements, even though London has that, but it doesn't, London, in my opinion, but I haven't been there recently to confirm. I've been to New York a lot. Okay. New York is just, there's so much innovation there, and there's so much edgy music there in New York. And a lot of musicians live in New York.
Yeah. Well, but
they either live in New York, London, or Los Angeles.
Okay.
Now, your book there, The Great Music City, where can they purchase this book?
Yes.
It's mostly online now.
Oh, okay.
Online. Okay. At Palgrave. But if they just Google The Great Music City, it's on so many websites like Booktopia, it's on Amazon, it's on, all those book sites.
So you could buy a hard copy of that if you want.
You'll have to order it online.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily sitting in any book. Well, the bookshops haven't been open until last week, but they're not sitting in the bookshelves anymore. Yeah. They're mostly all online. I think that's the way of the future with books.
Yeah, so we're old. We don't know about that stuff.
So basically, books now is pretty much online. You download, is it? Rather than the hard copy, just like the music industry, same sort of thing.
Yeah, it's basically, but I always prefer, similar to going to a live music gig, I always prefer to read a hard copy of a book.
All right, Andrea Baker, appreciate your time.
Yes.
Okay.
A big hand for Andrea Baker.
Yes, thank you very much, Andrea Baker. Are you tired of the drip, drip, drip of gonorrhea? Peter Rubin, that's the name, just wash your troubles down the drain. What are you laughing at? Wow. I heard that somewhere. I don't know where. I used to sing it when I was a kid.
Is that our TV?
That's a commercial. No, our commercial should be about bougie up. You know that cream I put under my eye? Mate, have a look at my eyes. They're not even black anymore, are they? What about the other one?
Let's have a look. Oh,
see, that's called half bleaching. You can put it on that one too.
I think it
makes it brighter.
I think it's supposed to go under your eyes, that stuff.
Yeah, no, it did, but it's taking the black out, but the other one's taking, it's making that coat lighter.
Why have you got black eyes? Why is it so black?
I can't say. I just probably don't sleep a lot. I don't know. No, I do sleep a lot.
You do sleep
sometimes.
But anyway, so everyone just that's pretty much the end of the show.
You wanted to say subscribe. First you told me because you've got a podcast checklist. Yes. And what's your podcast checklist?
Well, people...
You say, turn up, put the phone on silent. You'd say, what else? Turn off your Bluetooth. Because you always stuff it up. But you said something about subscribe, so hurry up.
Oh, yeah. People, it'd be good if people like the show. They don't want to hear more. They just subscribe to the YouTube, Spotify and Apple. It does help you. YouTube, just click that button.
You're good at commercials.
The like button. Ding, 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 ding.
Are you tired? Want to go and get your butt lifted at Bougie Up? Come on, you want to get a butt lift, don't you?
Okay, I'm Tony Shopper off Nardella.
And I'm Domenico Giuliano Sabana.
And we'll see you next time on SHUMPCAST.
SHUMPCAST.